Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Spanish Football Podcast. I'm Phil Kitromilides, here with Sid Lowe, ready to talk about what happened in Matchday 11 in La Liga EA Sports. Hello, Sydney.
Good morning, Philip. In fact, it's not morning, is it? Sorry. Good afternoon, Philip.
Should have been morning, but somebody was very busy writing to record in the morning, so we're recording in the afternoon. You just finished writing, though, which is good.
Literally just been sending it as we logged on. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, this is what happened on Matchday 11 Friday night. Saw Getafe continue their extraordinarily impressive start to the season, beating Girona 2-1. Girona remain bottom of the table, and their very, very poor start to the season continues. Their manager, Michel, is really hanging on to his job by a thread, I would suggest. Then on Saturday, we saw Villarreal beat Atletico Madrid beat...
I enjoyed that. I think we should do that every week that Raya lose.
Villarreal beat Raya by a kind of 4-0 at the Estadio de la Cerámica. Atletico Madrid beat Sevilla by 3-0 at the Metropolitano. Real Sociedad won a frantic Basque derby 3-2 against Athletic Club. And Real Madrid thrashed a sorry Valencia side 4-0 at the Bernabeu. Sunday saw Celta Vigo score in injury time. They were very close to an 8th 1-1 draw of the season, but they scored in injury time to win 2-1 at Levante. Alaves beat Espanyol by the same scoreline. Barca beat Elche 3-1. Wasn't necessarily as comfortable as the scoreline might suggest. And Betis overcame Mallorca 3-0. Two brilliant goals from Anthony, who also assisted in the game and really should have had a hat-trick. Monday Night Football comes to you from the Estadio Carlos Tartiere at Sociedad against Osasuna. Sydney is hoping to be there, so we better get this podcast on the road, Sid, because you certainly need to get on the road. There is so much content over at patreon.com/TSFP. TSF patrons get the Monday and the preview pod on Friday absolutely free of adverts. They get a Q&A pod and a bonus pod every week. There's the newsletter, the TSFP diary, and the Discord. You can join us from just €4.75 a month. It's a terrific value if you like Spanish football. Let's start then by talking about the Basque derby, Sid, which you literally just finished writing about a couple of minutes ago. It finished 3-2 to Real Sociedad, a 92nd minute from a winner from John Gorrochategui. La Real were 1-0 up in this game, and then they were 2-1 up in this game. They thought they'd gone 3-1 up in this game, but it was ruled out for offside. Then Athletic pulled it back to 2-2, and then that injury time goal all played out in the peeing rain of the Basque country, which is how all Basque derbies should be played. But yeah, tell us about the game and what you've been writing about.
I've been writing essentially about what you've just said. The idea that this was a Basque derby the way it's supposed to be, and it was a Basque derby that was won the way it should be, like a kind of chaotic goal in the rain where there's a million bodies in the area and it drops to someone who's 6 yards out and he cracks it as if his life depends on it. A real have that of a finish, a real take that, you bastards. Partly because the ball drops to Gorro and his first shot is awful. So it's really awful shot that he strikes really badly. Somehow he's lucky that it bounces through all the bodies in the area to Mikel Oyarzabal, who turns it back in. And he suddenly sees this thing sit before him and he kind of runs steaming onto it like a stampede and absolutely levers it into the top of the net, which is a way that you should do it. He used that lovely Spanish phrase after he said, "I hit it with all of my soul." The truth is he actually hit it with his shin, but, that doesn't really matter. And that kind of made it almost more perfect. And obviously the significance of this is the fact that it's the Basque derby. I didn't know this at first, but I've seen the statistic now. It's the first time anyone's ever won a Basque derby in an added time at the end of the game.
No, really?
Yeah. Which just feels completely counterintuitive, doesn't it? It feels like the kind of thing that should be happening all the time. So it makes that even more special, that this feels like the way a Basque derby should end, and yet it's never actually happened. And then obviously on top of that, the other element to it, the really important dimension for Real Sociedad, is that it had a terrible start to the season. They'd only won one of their first 9 games. This now means that they've won 2 in a row, 3 in a row if you want to count the Copa del Rey game, and a feeling, I think, for Real Sociedad that something shifted. In fact, Gorro said at the end of the game at the weekend, he described it as being a click. We have clicked. Something has fallen into place now. And he said, I quite like this line, and obviously it's partly because it's appropriate post derby. He said, we've still got some things we need to get right in footballing terms, but now we go to war in every match.
Oh, that's a nice line, isn't it? I guess that made it into your piece today.
It certainly did.
Yes.
There was, you know what was funny actually? I sort of enjoyed it, and I included a bit more of these than I normally would. But I was going through the local papers, the San Sebastian-based newspapers and the Basque-based newspapers, and there's so many kind of really excitable lines. And I thought, too many of these are too good. And there's one where someone uses the old Eduardo Galeano comment that, the only orgasm allowed in modern life is football goals. And this is that moment. And, someone else describing it as being like if you could measure it on the Richter scale, this was an earthquake, and just this sort of, this kind of very, very, very excitable stuff, because it was fantastic. And if you're not allowed to get excited about a Basque derby, what are you allowed to get excited about?
A slightly questionable comment there from Eduardo Galeano about. But anyway, it's a really terrible start to the season for Athletic Club, or certainly they started very well and then they've just fallen away completely. 4 wins from 11. They're 11th in the table. They're trying to balance the Champions League as well. Obviously, they've had players missing. They've had injuries in Iñaki Williams, Nico Williams, but they're just not clicking at all in this season at all.
No, and at the risk of labouring a point that we've made before, they knew this was potentially coming.
Yeah,
they knew that they were a team based, not entirely, but to a very great extent, based on their physical intensity, based on always pressing high, based on not allowing you to breathe, and they aren't finding a way of doing that with the two competitions, with the big injuries, and particularly the injuries. You've had the two Williams brothers injured. You've had moments when Sunset has either not been on form or not being available. You're right. They just don't look like a good team at all this season. There was a real relief when they beat Karabakh, and a feeling that they've given themselves a chance to continue in the Champions League, because there's that kind of sense of building towards it for 10 years, then almost immediately it going away from you, because they play two teams that in truth are just too good for them. Going away to Dortmund and playing Arsenal at home. They go away to Newcastle this week, and I think there is a feeling that you could do with a point or something there, but the way they're playing, very, very difficult to imagine them getting a point. And then you're in a position where you basically have to beat everyone that you could beat. Now, PSG are coming. They probably won't beat them, but they would have to win the other 3 games.
Yeah, Newcastle lost to West Ham, so at the weekend that could give Athletic Club a little bit of hope there, because nobody loses to West Ham at the moment. All right, that was the Basque derby. For more on that, go and read Sid's column, which should be up by the time you're listening to this podcast. We should talk about Real Madrid beating Valencia 4-0. Real Madrid, of course, are now top of the table, 5 points clear of Barcelona. Looking pretty good. The context of this is that they're up against the Valencia side, who look genuinely shambolic, and they're going down, and they were probably going to change their manager, because that's what they do. It's just the cycle. A new guy comes in, they bounce back, they move up the table, relegation is no longer on the cards, and then they fall apart. We'll get to Valencia in just a second. But Real Madrid, comfortably better than Valencia. All eyes were on Vinicius Junior. He started, and he got a pretty good reception from the Bernabeu, right? Sid, you were there. I was asking you to listen out to see if he got any whistles or anything. I thought he might get whistled a little bit, because the Bernabeu crowd are very demanding. They've got certain standards, and gesticulating like he did in the Clásico wouldn't have gone down well with a lot of them. But actually, it was fine.
Yeah, it was fine. Nothing whatsoever. Not even that run that you like to talk about. There was none of that. I think it was a game. You're right. They were in a difficult position, I think, both Vinicius and Xabi Alonso, because this was a game where everything they did was going to be read as a message, even the things that weren't a message, which of course means that the things they did were messages, because they were having to be really careful about how they did them. I don't think it was chance. Again, this is maybe me reading into it. This is maybe me being guilty of exactly what I'm talking about. I don't think it was chance that Alonso took the opportunity to take off Kylian Mbappe and Vinicius together. I don't think it was chance that Vinicius gave Alonso a hand slap as he went off the pitch. I don't think it was chance that Vinicius was given a lot of minutes, but was also taken off. I think because I think everybody knows that whatever you do is going to be interpreted, and therefore you need to be very careful about how it's interpreted. I thought he did play pretty well, Vinicius, but I thought he was actually probably the least impressive of their attacking players. I thought both Bellingham and Mbappe had better games than him. Arda Güler, I don't know if you call him attacker, but he provided another assist for Mbappe. That's 6 this season. And you were saying this in the context of of Valencia being poor, and I absolutely agree with that. But this was the best I'd seen Real Madrid play, and I thought what they did,
Definitely.
that was interesting for me. I don't know, it's interesting the right word. Yeah, I suppose so. At least the thing that caught my attention was that they played really quite good football. I wouldn't necessarily say they were sparkling or massively exciting, if you see what I mean. But what they were was they just didn't give Valencia even the slightest hint of ever having a chance. At no point did they allow Valencia out. At no point did they allow Valencia basically to get out their own third, let alone their own half. They created plenty of chances. They won it 4-0. They could have scored more. But it wasn't like a huge avalanche of chances. It was more just that sense of total domination, of complete superiority all the way through the game. They missed a penalty. Obviously, Vinicius missed that, and more of that in a minute if you want, because I thought Alonso's reaction was very interesting. And I think the way that Madrid played suggests a team that is clear now about what it wants to do.
I think it's very clear. I think the starting 11 is pretty clear as well, apart from the one position on the right-hand side. That's up for grabs, and that might be changed a little bit in terms of the opponent. But generally speaking, I think we've found the starting 11 now for Real Madrid, and Xabi Alonso has as well. I don't think there's going to be too many more experiments or surprises when we see the starting 11. The 2 goals for Kylian Mbappe, 1 for Jude Bellingham, absolutely brilliant hit from Jude Bellingham, and 1 for Alvaro Carreras. Stunning way to score your first goal for Real Madrid from Carreras. Go on then, talk a little bit about the penalty, which came when Real Madrid were 2-0 up. Mbappe had already scored a penalty, he was on a hat-trick, and he let Vinicius take it.
Yeah, and the reason I want to bring this up, and again, at the risk, and I fully hold up my hands here, I'm literally doing it on screen now, at the risk of going into that trap of interpreting and reinterpreting things, but I actually thought that what Xabi Alonso said post-game was quite clear-cut. So Mbappe takes a penalty and scores it. He's on the hat-trick, as you say. He gives the penalty to Vinicius, which on the face of it is a good gesture, and it's a gesture of solidarity, and it's a gesture of teammates and so on. But bear in mind that the issue here is more about Alonso and Vinicius, not Mbappe and Vinicius. Vinicius misses the penalty. Post-game, Alonso is asked about this, and Alonso says, well, the penalty taker is Mbappe.
The number one penalty taker.
The number one penalty taker is Mbappe, and put on the board. And he said, and then on the pitch, things happen. Decisions are made. And he doesn't look entirely impressed by that. But if that had been it, that might have been sort of, it kind of gets forgotten. But then he's re-asked Alonso. And Alonso is asked, do you like the fact that players kind of take decisions sometimes? That there's this autogestión, what would you call that in English? Kind of, I suppose, self-management of the players. And Alonso says, I'd have liked it if we'd scored the penalty.
Yes. Yeah.
Mbappe scored the first. I would have liked us to have scored the second.
Yes.
Mbappe is the first penalty taker. Now, I don't know about you. Maybe I'm reading between the lines too much. I thought that was very, very pointed.
Yeah, but I thought it was quite well handled as well.
Yeah, I thought it was well handled, but I thought it was very pointed. I thought the point he made was made very, very clearly, I thought.
Yeah, I agree. Briefly, let's talk about Jude Bellingham, because he was really good in this game. He scored in 3 consecutive matches. It was a brilliant goal that he scored in this one as well. But it's not just that he scored a fantastic goal. It's everything that he's doing. He's physically looking like an absolute monster. You know what? He looks like someone who was playing with his shoulder strap and in pain for 18 months. And now he's had surgery and he feels great and he's charging all over the pitch, looking unstoppable physically.
I don't want to be a smart ass, but we kept saying, didn't we? Why isn't this operation happening? Because he was playing, and that strapping. Yeah, I think most of our listeners will have seen it, or at some point seen it. It was a big, heavy strapping, really quite a limited strapping, and that's before we even get into the question of how much it might be hurting and all the rest of it. But I think you're right. I think he looks like someone who's finally thrown off those physical problems and looks really strong. I'm going to take slight issue with one thing you said.
Go on.
You said charging all over the pitch.
Yeah.
One of the interesting things for me, and actually I asked Xabi Alonso this after the game.
I heard you asked. It was a very good question and a very interesting answer.
Because I'm very taken by this, is that Xabi Alonso has repeatedly used the word efficient to refer to Bellingham. And, as they say in Spanish, part information, part, interpretation. Opinion. I think that... Oh, yeah, that's right. Sorry, information and no opinion. Yeah, sorry, not interpretation. What am I talking about? Anyway, I feel very clearly that is partly because Alonso, what he actually doesn't want is Bellingham to be everywhere. You know, he doesn't want Bellingham to be trying to do too much, try and be all over the pitch. And essentially, I asked him, I said, look, I wondered if you could explain to us what efficient means to you. Is it a case of trying to get Bellingham to not necessarily be all over the pitch, but be in those parts of the pitch where there's a productivity to what he does? And his answer was sort of yes.
Yeah.
But actually, what I thought was interesting was he talked about it's about the position in which we can give him the ball. And it suggested a structure that was about feeding Bellingham and very much seeing him as someone who can provide the final pass because we get the ball to him. In other words, effectively saying to Bellingham, don't come looking for it. Don't come and get it. We'll take it to you. And of course, what that requires is structure. Now, here comes my interpretive part of it. I think in essentially what it is Bellingham should be running less, but running better. And I think we're seeing that. I'd like to know the kilometre stats to be able to back it up. It will possibly turn out to be complete nonsense, but that's the eye test I've got anyway.
Okay, I'll try and have a look for some of those and let you know on the next podcast. But yeah, Jude Bellingham, very impressive in Real Madrid's very impressive 4-0 win over Valencia. Valencia, who, as we said, Sid, are in all sorts of trouble. Awful. I was listening. You guys were there. You and I were there. I was listening to Carlos Corberan's post-match press on the radio. There were some very tense moments in that press conference, and there was some really sort of aggressive questioning to him.
Just extraordinary. And I was sitting next to Al, sort of digging in the ribs, going, "Are you listening to this?" One of them was the kind of question that you ask, that you ask a politician who's been caught with his pants down. I mean, it was, or a politician who's completely crashed the economy or something. It was the question basically was, "Are you not ashamed?" And it was, are you not ashamed that your team is terrible, that your team is this, that, and the other? And there were two people in a row who both used their questions to not really offer questions, but to tell him how shit he was and how shit his team is. And it was, you're right, it was incredibly aggressive. And one of them, by the way, I thought was very interesting because one of them, the question was essentially, aren't you embarrassed by how bad you are when you go away and play against big teams? Because of course they conceded 6 at Barcelona and they just conceded 4 at the Bernabeu. Now, if Corberan had wanted to, I mean, he could have turned around and said, "Listen, you bellend, literally the last time we came here to the Bernabeu, we won."
Yeah.
But there you go.
But he didn't. He was very
straight. No, he was a lot more polite than I am.
Definitely didn't use the word bellend at any point during that press conference. But yeah, Valencia in trouble.
I wanted to.
They're in the relegation zone. Next up for them, they're at home to Betis this weekend. And then after that, they've got the Valencia derby against Levante after the international break. So there we go. Trouble in Valencia, not for the first time in the last few years. All right, let's talk about Barcelona beating Elche by 3-1. And first things first, let's talk about your monumental and magnificent and extraordinary prediction on the preview pod. You said that Elche would have more possession than Barcelona in this game, and they had 51% possession. They did. They literally had more.
Crept under the bar.
Yes. But I mean, we kind of knew it because we've seen Elche play. Eder Sarabia very well. You know how the manager wants his side to play. He's consistently said that I'm not going to change how I play. It doesn't matter where we go. He said it pre-match. He said it right before kickoff as well. And indeed, Elche came with a very brave way of trying to play, and they found themselves 2-0 down after 11 minutes because they made 2 really clear individual mistakes, which were punished ruthlessly by Barcelona. Lamine Yamal with the opener, Ferran Torres scoring the second, but Elche kept going and they were rewarded with a goal just before half-time from Rafa Mir. They had a chance to make it 2-2. Rafa Mir hits the bar, and then Barcelona score. Marcus Rashford makes it 3-1, and Barcelona win with less possession. And I mean, I don't want to be too down on Barcelona. I don't want to be too negative on them, but I was commentating this game and I was just thinking, this is another not very good performance from Barcelona. And I went through, and apologies if you're listening to the commentary we did yesterday with Terry Gibson on the world feed, but I went through Barcelona's results during the game, trying to find the last time that they played a game and they were convincing and it was a good performance, and you could say this has been a really good showing from Barcelona. And I think the conclusion was just before that, there was a 3-0 win against Getafe. That was it. That was it. And that was at the end of September, because this Elche game, yeah, I mean, they won 3-1, but there were lots of questions that we can get into. The Clásico against a difficult opponent, but, they weren't brilliant in that. They beat Olympiacos 6-1, and even then, it's a very deceiving scoreline because there were lots of question marks in that. They needed a 92nd minute goal against Girona from Ronald Araujo to win that. They lost to Sevilla. They lost to PSG. They had to come from behind against Real Sociedad. They had to come from behind against Oviedo. And then we get to that 3-0 win against Getafe that they played at the Johan Cruyff on the 21st of September. And they were really quite good in that, and they were really quite good in the 6-0 against Valencia, which preceded them in the league. But it's been a while, Sid, since we've seen Barcelona put in a really strong performance. The caveat being that they've had up to 7 very important players missing, and again in this game there was no Pedri, there's no Rafinha. First 2 choice goalkeepers are out, obviously. But still, there were some really sort of glaring things that were wrong with this Barcelona side.
Do you know what's one of the most interesting parts of this is that post-game, Ferran Torres said, I thought we saw the Barcelona of last year.
Yes. I had to live translate that. And I was as he was saying this, like, what?
No, yeah. It didn't make a lot of sense, did it? And this is a game where, as you say, that Elche hit the post twice. There's 2 really big mistakes which helped Barcelona out. One, I think, is a mistake that you can possibly put down to the way they want to play, bringing it out. The other is just a slip, isn't it? Really, the other is someone really unlucky just slips. I think Barcelona are scoring more goals than their football suggests at the moment. I think there is a lack of clarity. I think they're not getting the press right. I think that even though Elche are a team that want the ball, you look at how often they went through Barcelona into the space behind them. It's not that they were keeping possession and Barcelona were bit by bit dropping off, and they were going through them when they wanted to as well, which of course is what everyone's done for a lot this season. Those stats that you gave me just before the Clásico, was it a 6, 2 5s and a 4 in terms of big chances created against them, I think, in the previous 4 games before the Clásico, or the previous 5 games before the Clásico. And it's all the way through the team. And it's something that it's hard to imagine that it improves enormously without Pedri. Isn't it? You can't see a scenario in which they get more control of the game without Pedri, and I don't think they look right at all. Now there's time, and when players come back, and I think particularly Rafinha, I think more than anybody else, Rafinha, I still think that Lewandowski is important to them for all of his flaws as well. And I suppose there's a little bit of a debate about Rashford, isn't there? Is Rashford in a way the embodiment of what we're talking about? Someone whose numbers are very good. Yeah. But you watch him and you're not 100% sure if you're convinced. Because his numbers are exceptional. I don't think we can argue with them at all.
There's an article in one of the papers the day before yesterday saying just that. These are really good numbers from Marcus Rashford, but actually he hasn't been that impactful on games, despite scoring and assisting. The goals haven't necessarily been that important, and I think it's unfair because I think he's done okay. I think he's done okay. I think he's done okay, actually. And it was a really good finish yesterday, although it wasn't his best performance. It wasn't his best performance yesterday. I think it was a little bit wasteful at times. But there we go. What about Lamine, Sid? Because he scored.
The way you said that, he scored. I mean, just carried all the weight of the butt there. You just said it scored. There was a very, very, very big butt, like a Luis Suarez sized butt was there. But he still doesn't look fully fit. He still doesn't look fully right. Flick had said, I say still, maybe that's the wrong word for me to use, because I think actually we may have this for a while. If you listen to what Flick had said pre-game when he talked about what was the phrase he used? He said he has, it comes and goes was the word I think he used. He said he needs to manage it and he needs to be professional because of course there's no operation planned. So this is about managing is musculature the right word? I suppose it is, isn't it? Sort of the muscular structure around it to make sure he's fully strength, that the balance is right in all around the groin area, all around the hip area, all around the lower back and his core. And at the moment, it's hurting. And at the moment, he doesn't seem to be moving particularly freely. And correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm sure you'll have the stat to hand, which I haven't got. Is this his first league goal since August?
That is a good question, and I think it is. Yes, since the game against Rayo Vallecano. Yeah, it was. Oh, I mean, of course, he missed 4 matches.
Yes.
So he missed all of September, pretty much. There was someone on the radio last night. I don't know if you heard him, Anton going through the minutes that Lamine has played recently, and suggesting if someone is coming back from injury and if someone is not physically 100%. Why are you giving him so many minutes? He played 88 minutes yesterday. Played 75 minutes against Olympiacos. Played 90 minutes against Real Madrid, 64 minutes against Girona, 75 minutes against Olympiacos. Is there an argument to be made? And then obviously Hansi Flick got angry when he went to the Spain national team and played those minutes.
Of course. I mean, look, I don't want to do that debate again. And I certainly don't want to do that debate in terms of taking sides. But the context when you're talking about protecting players is that everybody has to play a role in that.
Right.
And I'll be honest with you, I didn't see this game live. I watched it back later on last night. And there must have been at least 15 minutes, I would say, before he went off.
Yes.
During which I was thinking, well, what's he doing on the pitch still? Why is he still there? And I would say 15 minutes is a very conservative estimate of that. I'd probably extend it to 25 or so. And yes, look, we say this without the details in hand, which you would assume that the medical staff have. You will assume that will be backed by the statistics. You will assume it will be backed by conversations with Lamine, by medical advice in terms of how much a player can withstand during the 90 minutes and whether the 90 minutes really matters or what matters is the work around it. And I'm speaking from a position of, of lack of expertise and lack of information, but it's striking. It's striking to see those numbers.
Shout out to Elche. I mean, it's really sort of quite thrilling to see a newly promoted side come up and play the way that they did. They've still never won away to Barcelona, and maybe yesterday was one of the best chances that they're going to get, particularly how they started the season and the way that they're approaching matches. But they were very brave. They had their chances, and they've got some really good players, and they've got a really good coach in Eder Sarabia, who is pretty forthright, pretty focused, and hopefully he keeps them up, because you want to see teams playing good football and exciting football and interesting, intriguing football. But I just wonder, it wouldn't be the first time if a team came up playing a certain way, manager doesn't change that way, isn't as pragmatic as you might necessarily need to be, and then they begin to struggle because they had unbeaten for the first 7 matches of the season, and now it's 1 point from a possible 12, and they've got quite a difficult run as well.
Yeah, I think it's, when you were saying as you were saying that, I hope he keeps him up. The first click in my mind is, well, of course he will. And then actually I was thinking, no, it wouldn't be the first time that a team came up, started playing really well, and then if you like, kind of reality intervened a little bit, that there was a slight tail off in terms of results, and that bit by bit results went against them. And it'd be very interesting as well to see how Elche, and in particular how Sarabia responds if they do go on a long bad run, and how well he can manage it, and how do I put this? How successfully they manage to keep their ideas clear. How successfully they manage to stick to their approach, and whether that approach actually continues to work for them.
Next up for them is a game against Real Sociedad, then Real Madrid and Getafe. So a few trips to the dentist there for Elche. Quickly, Atletico Madrid in that 3-0 victory over Sevilla. The goals coming in the second half. I think Atletico Madrid, deserving to win this game. They were better than Sevilla. They had some really good chances, particularly in the first half. Not too many, but 3 very, very clear chances fell to Nico Gonzalez, which he didn't take. They were given a penalty to break the deadlock. Julian Alvarez scoring from the spot kick, and then from there it only felt like Atletico Madrid were going to win it. The penalty, by the way, wasn't spotted by the referee. It is the most clear-cut penalty you will ever see.
Definitely not a foul.
Oh my God. I was commentating this, and I go, hold on, that's a clear penalty.
Yeah.
And have I lost my mind? Like, have I seen this completely wrong? Like, play continued. The referee didn't stop. But yeah, it was very, very clear.
I can only think that the referee's position, because Nianzou sort of swings past the ball, I can only assume that from his position, he doesn't notice that the swing hits Jimenez. But Jimenez goes to the ground. He's got these 4 stud marks across his thigh. I mean, I know stud marks aren't proof of anything. Well, I suppose they are proof of anything. But I don't think you can give a penalty on the basis of stud marks. Is what I mean. I don't think you can go, oh yeah, look at that, definitely a penalty. But yes, it should be given. I think the very short answer to analysing Atletico Madrid is that it's falling into place and they look strong and they've got the quality of players and an identity building and a sense of stability, I think, and a certain continuity, which I still think needs to be reinforced with away wins. And I know they've got one now, but I think it needs to be reinforced with away wins to be certain of that. And, shall we give Simeone his credit? By which, of course, I mean Simeone Jr., because he's brilliant.
Terrific assist for the second goal. Just everything.
Everything that's him, isn't it?
The essence of Giuliano Simeone condensed into an assist. Absolutely brilliant. Set it up for Thiago Almada, who Almada then set up Antoine Griezmann for the third. And yes, it is falling nicely into place. Alex Baena playing a little bit deeper in this game, playing alongside Koke in a midfield too, with Pablo Barrios being out, and Alex Baena, the kind of player who is so useful for managers because he can play there, he can play wide, he can play centrally, he can play off top the striker. He's a absolutely top player, and having him back, I think, is extremely important. And getting into the dynamic of the first team, he's going to be an extremely important player for them.
One caveat I would throw in there.
Go on.
I just hope that Alex Baena's versatility doesn't mean he ends up not having if you like, a kind of a clear role and a regular.
Or playing
role
at left back. Yeah,
I mean, you can see a scenario where it happens, can't you?
Yes. He's famously playing players out of position or reconverting them. Marcos Llorente, by the way, 31st game in a row where he's played all 90 minutes. Every minute of every game.
That'd be that diet. Did you see the comment from Koke post game?
Yes. Where
he was asked what's Giuliano eating, and he said Marcos Llorente's diet.
Which is the caveman diet. It's basically, meat and veg.
Yes, it's a caveman diet and certain caveman attitudes as well.
Indeed. On that note, here's what's going on in the Segunda. Racing are top on 25 points after a 1-0 win over Real Sociedad on Friday. Almeria are second. They beat Eibar 3-1. Burgos up to third after they won 2-1 at Leganés. And then it's Depor, Las Palmas and Cádiz all level on 20 points at the bottom of the table. Real Zaragoza lost their bottom and they're going down to the Primera Ref unless things change. A catastrophic situation for one of Spain's biggest clubs. So there we go. That's it for today's edition of the Spanish Football Podcast. We will be over at patreon.com/TSFP for the rest of the week. Loads of content over there. If we haven't talked about something you want us to talk about, send us a question. We'll answer it on the Q&A pod tomorrow. And if you don't want to give us €4.75 a month, okay, fine. It's not really that much, but I won't hold it against you. Make sure you listen to Friday's preview podcast and all will be good. Adios, amigos.
Cheerio.